We're on a mission from God.
Wendy? Sarah!
So I got that going for me.
Darling?
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Light of my life.
We enjoy your films.
I am a human being.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in real time. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today marks the 40th anniversary of the release of Last Married Couple in America, or The Last Married Couple in America, on February 8th, 1980. It was written by John Herman Shaner, directed by Gilbert Cates, and released by Universal Pictures. The movie is considered a 1980s update of the earlier Paul Mazursky comedy Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, which also starred Natalie Wood. Mm-hmm. And I think someone said that it's basically like them 10 years later or 20 years later.
I think Natalie Wood said that.
Oh, did she?
I think that's what she said. Oh, it's basically like that other movie.
Yeah, but it's like a sequel to that movie, but I'm the only person who came back. This was Natalie Wood's final film role. She had one film after this that she didn't quite finish filming. So right. This is the last one that they completed the film. But she did work some of the movie Brainstorm, which was eventually released in 1983. But her part of that film was incomplete.
So what did they do for that film? Do you know?
I don't know. So we'll have to cover that when we get to it. But she died age 43 on a weekend boat trip to Catalina with husband Robert Wagner and Brainstorm co-star Christopher Walken. Peter Bogdanovich has directed a biographical movie on her life called The Mystery of Natalie Wood, which details her, at times, troubled relationship with husband Robert Wagner. Wagner routinely voiced concerns about the attention she received from male co-stars, and he announced he would divorce her during the filming of West Side Story. After she was in it, by the way.
When was West Side Story?
60s, late 60s. Yeah.
Wait, so he said he was going to divorce her in the late 60s, and then it wasn't until...
No, they did divorce.
Oh, wait, why was she on a boat with her ex-husband?
Because they were remarried.
Oh, man.
This is the golden era of Hollywood. Everyone remarried. So, yeah. After a brief marriage to screenwriter Richard Gregson, Natalie Wood was again divorced and remarried Wagner 9 years before her death. The investigation of her death was reopened in 2011 when Dennis Davern, the captain of Wagner and Wood's boat, the Splendor, which I'm assuming is named after Splendor in the Grass, a film she was in, but Splendor is spelled differently. Doesn't matter. He admitted to the police that he had lied during the original investigation. Walken's story has always been that he was asleep during whatever happened, and Wagner had testified basically the same, that he had gone to sleep alone. But Davern told police originally that he didn't hear anything suspicious, but then he changed his story in 2011 to reflect overhearing a loud fight between Wagner and Wood that night. He also testified that Wood had been flirting with Walken all night. This was just a boat full of people with W's in their last names. So Wagner was enraged by her constantly flirting with him, and eventually it bubbled up into a fight. When her body was discovered, they found a pretty high alcohol content and motion sickness medication, which is normal for a boat, but they affect each other. Those medication and alcohol shouldn't be taken together. And the official story from the beginning was that a dinghy had come loose from the boat and she was trying to secure it and fell overboard. But she also had bruises on her body and arms and an abrasion on her left cheek, which were probably there before she drowned.
So officially she died of drowning?
Yes. The cause of death in the original coroner's report was that it was accidental drowning. But as recently as the 2011 update of the investigation, it was changed to drowning and other undetermined factors. So they don't think that it was drowning alone that caused her death.
Right. But she probably drowned because of the mix of alcohol and the medication.
Assuming she was conscious when she went into the water.
Oh,
that would be the case.
She was also known for not being a very strong swimmer.
Yeah, she had a terrible fear of water. And her sister, who played Plenty O'Toole in... Which James Bond movie was that? It's one of the Roger Moore ones, the one in Vegas.
That's
where he drives the Moonlander.
The one in Vegas is actually Sean Connery.
Is it?
Yeah, with Willard White. That is Diamonds Are Forever.
Was it Diamonds Are Forever? Maybe it was Diamonds Are Forever then.
I remember the character of Plenty O'Toole, but I can't remember which.
But either way, that was Natalie Wood's sister that played the character, and she almost drowned on the set of that movie because there was a scene where she was supposed to be drowned in a pool.
Then that is
I am confirming
Diamonds Forever.
it is Diamonds Are Forever,
Diamonds Are
according to
Forever.
Wikipedia.
Okay. She was what is the sister's name?
Lana
Blank.
Wood.
Lana, that's right. She was tied to a weight that was at the bottom of the pool to hold her body below the surface of the water to look like a dead body in the water. I don't know why she couldn't just be floating.
Terrifying.
But the slant of the bottom of the pool caused the weight to slowly shift deeper and deeper into the pool, and she almost drowned on the set.
Oh, Jesus.
And then later her sister did drown.
That is horrifying.
But
I never knew that Natalie Wood was so old when she, not that she was old. I mean, she was
But
in
yeah,
her
that she was
40s,
older.
but yeah,
Yeah,
like
I always
I
assumed-
thought she died when she was young.
yeah, I thought she was like in her like late 20s, maybe
Yeah, that's
early
what I thought
30s.
too. I mean, she
didn't realize she was
looks really
43.
great, but
Yeah.
like, I didn't think she made it to her 40s.
Well, she kind of had an association of teenage death in both West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause.
That's true.
So it's like she's
maybe
like in
that's
these
what
movies
I'm-
about teenagers
yeah.
dying young.
So maybe we conflate
And-
her filmography with her actual
Yeah.
life story.
And James Dean did die young.
That's
Yeah.
true,
They're
yeah.
famously
Yeah.
in that movie together. So I think of that's because I believe the same thing. I never realized that she was
In her 40s
in her
by then.
40s. Yeah.
She did have a daughter with that middle husband between the two Robert Wagners.
Well, just to be clear, it's one
Betwixt.
Robert
Yeah.
Wagner.
No, it was actually a clone of Robert Wagner that she remarried. But her daughter with Gregson was actually an actress and had at least one memorable role that I recognized when I saw it. She played Caroline Fortis in High Fidelity, who is the music columnist that he's flirting with that wants like to know what his top 5 albums are.
What's her daughter's name?
I don't know. I think it's Natasha Wagner. Because I think that was actually Natalie Wood's birth name was Natasha. Because she's the daughter of Russian immigrants. But yeah, she was the music columnist in Grosse Pointe Blank, which was coincidentally, well, probably not coincidentally, written by her husband, D.V. DeVincentis. Natasha Wagner's husband. So we start the film in Valley Village.
We're talking about this movie now?
I think so.
Sure, why not?
I think it's important to bring up one other thing.
Sure.
From the credits. Because there's a lot of interesting names in the credits.
Yeah, no, I have some notes here on that too.
Is it Edith Head?
Yeah.
As soon as I came out, Edith Head.
This is the first Edith Head movie that we've had so far, and she did the costume design for Natalie Wood and for Rhoda.
Yeah, I said Rhoda too. I have my
What's
notes.
the actress's name? I keep
Valerie
blanking on it.
Harper.
Valerie Harper, there you go. But yeah, so Edith Head, that's fun, and I found some pictures of her on set with Natalie Wood during the production. But
Put them on the website.
yeah. But so yeah, we start the very first shot of the movie. They're playing football in a park that we have been to many times.
Many times.
Our friends of ours live right across the street from this park they're playing football in Valley Village.
This whole movie is like a tour of LA.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. I know these spots.
So many of these at the time, because this is back when like Los Angeles was where you shot everything. It was either Los Angeles or New York. You didn't go on location for anything.
And I always forget how old those 2 triangular buildings in Century City are.
Oh yeah.
I was like, man, those were there then? I always feel like those were newer, but I guess they're not.
I was surprised that Matt and Amanda's place was there at the time. I was like, wow, that building's older than I thought.
Well, and those pipes are still coming out of the ground, the sprinkler pipes.
Yeah, it's like nobody's gonna fix that.
Put them underground.
But yeah, so we open on 3 couples playing football in the park. They're not playing it very aggressively. They're kind of joking around with each other. But it seems to be like it's a weekly game that they do. And there's just typical like couples arguing with each other and flirting with each other. But we move quickly to a house party where it seems like only Jeff, the George Segal character,
Yeah.
only Jeff is at this party. And then Natalie Wood went to go have lunch with Rhoda. I'm just going to keep calling her Rhoda over the course of this. But at this party, basically a friend of Jeff's, Howard, is standing up and pitching divorce to everyone. Like it's like this new thing that he invented. And it's just amazing. And you have so much freedom and it's wonderful.
And giving reasons why marriage doesn't work in the modern day.
Right.
Why it's archaic.
Yeah, and he says that the only happy couple at the whole party are Donald and Reggie, And then someone points out, but they're newlyweds. So.
That was such a great line.
Yeah.
Because the reveal, I mean, obviously...
The joke was supposed to be that the only happy
gay.
couple is the gay couple, but it turns out it's like, no, that's not why. The reason why is because they just got married. But yeah, and he's calling marriage fascism, and Jeff is like jumping in, like offended on behalf of marriage and talking about how he actually has a happy marriage. And then we cut over to Natalie Wood, who's having lunch with Valerie Harper. What is the character's name? Barbara. And she's basically doing the same thing, like trying to pitch like, oh, are you still with Jeff? Oh, you should get a divorce. It's great. I just got divorced. So she's pitching like a combination of divorce and vaginal rejuvenation, which is like terrifying to Mari, the Natalie Wood character. She's like, oh my God, why are we talking about this like in a public setting? Like, this is terrifying. Why is this happening to me? And she's like, oh no, it's worked wonders for me. See? And she looks over at some guy that's like been watching her from across the restaurant and can somehow tell that she's had vaginal rejuvenation.
Well, you could just tell how tight someone's vagina is by looking at them.
You can tell. It's very clear. But so that guy sits down across from them. He's like, hey, how's it going? And they're like, oh, we're not interested in a conversation. He's like, oh, don't worry, I have a friend. And she's like, well, I'm married, so it doesn't. And he's like, that's fine. And she kind of smiles about it. So the next day we're at football again. But one of the couples is gone, the Drydens, because it turned out that they got separated, possibly after the divorce conversation at the party the night before. But there's still 3 couples because another one has jumped in to fill the gap. So now we're being introduced to Marv and his wife.
Yeah, I got really confused at this point. I was like, wait, who's this couple?
Yeah.
Where'd they come from?
A new couple is being thrown into the mix because there's just a lot of couples in this movie. But yeah, Marv is a very interesting character. He kind of reminds me of Eugene Levy. Like the way he talks.
I kept thinking that repeatedly.
Yeah, Elena called me. Separated.
And he keeps making like weird jokes and voices and stuff like that. But he's like, oh, who's going to be the next one to get divorced? Like trying to scare everybody like it's a ghost story.
But Marv is played by interesting person, Richard Benjamin.
Oh, yeah. He's an actor in a couple things, but he's also directed a lot of stuff.
Yeah, directed a lot of stuff like The Money Pit.
Yeah, Money Pit, Mermaids, Milk Money, My Stepmother is an Alien.
Yeah.
And also a lot of movies that presumably don't begin with M. But those 4 happen to.
I was just going to say Marcy X.
Yeah, Marcy X. That's another M movie from him. But he did have some that didn't begin with M, but I just didn't write them down because I messed it up. But he was also Major Danby in Catch-22, and he played Peter Martin in Westworld, the film Westworld. But yeah, he's pretty funny in this movie. Oh, I forgot to mention, too, that one of the people that was dancing at the party, there's like a guy dancing with a woman, and I was like, I recognize this guy. Who is this guy? And then I realized that it's William Bogert, who we had in Simon as the host of the debate show where they were talking about whether or not Simon was actually an alien. We moved to a health spa or something where all the guys are. Like, everybody seems pretty independently wealthy and they can just kind of like wander around and do whatever they like. We do have a few shots of Jeff at work, but
it's a very white person movie.
Yeah. He's like an architect.
Who goes to like the sauna? Like, I don't
know. In the 80s,
I don't know. A bunch
rich
of dudes hang out naked in a steamy room.
Well, it seems like it's at
if I had the money, I would do that every day.
Yeah, it seems like it might be like at a country club or some kind of like place where you have to be a member to something, because they have the hot tub to themselves, but they're also sitting in these like weird little chairs in the hot tub. They're not just sitting in it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, the sauna. It reminds me a lot of like the Goonies, where it's just like when they're banging on the pipes and you're seeing like all the different bathrooms in the country club and all the different like facilities that this place has.
Yeah,
that's the only reason it made me think it was.
This is just what architects do in their plethora of off time, because he kind of makes his own schedule. He's an architect and she's like a sculptress, right? That's like. Is that what you would call that job?
No.
Sculptor?
I think they're all sculptors.
Okay.
There's no female version of sculptor.
You
We're
could
all
femalize
sculptors.
any job, can't you?
You could just put an S on anything and it's a women's job.
Congratulations, you can be a doctoress now. But yeah, they're just joking about divorce again in the hot tub. And one of the guys happens to be a divorce attorney, but he's only a divorce attorney for women, who he immediately then preys upon.
Yeah, that's so shady and
It's a
gross.
very uncomfortable conversation that's played for glorious laughter.
It's like, that's so wonderful. I love vulnerable women.
But then all the guys who have been divorced that are in this conversation have all remarried, and they're talking about that. And when they move to the sauna, one of the guys is like, he's on his like third or fourth wife, and he's like, I really think this one's gonna stick. He's like, you know what I want is I want something like Love Story. And then I like the line from Jeff where he's just like,
What are you talking about? The girl in that died.
He's like, really?
Maybe that's what I'm really looking for.
Jesus.
then while they're all sitting there, Marv comes in and he keeps messing with the heat, and he's like, what are you doing? It's already 143 in here. And he's like, it's only 140. Don't be a liar. And then he's like, why are you doing that? I can't breathe. It's too hot in this room. And he turns it all the way up, and then he just goes, ah! And just starts yelling for like 30 seconds. And everyone else, they're just cutting to all the reaction shots, but he's still yelling. He keeps yelling. And the implication of this yell is that he just got divorced. But then for some reason he's really upset about it. It's like, why did you do it if you're so upset about it? Like, isn't the whole Louis C.K. bit is that like no good marriage ever ended in divorce?
It feels like they keep having everybody get divorced and then like
be dependent on each other and get back together.
Yeah, well, or like it just I don't know how this movie feels about marriage and divorce, but it's like everybody really wants it and then they do it and then they regret it and they're upset about it.
But it just seems like I maybe that's changed though. I think divorce like trended in the 80s. And like there was a lot of people that were just doing it because everyone's getting divorced, and that's where this like the whole premise for this movie comes from. Is like, oh man, so many people, there was like a glut of divorce going on. But like nowadays it's like when people get divorced, it's like, oh no, I can't stand that person, I'm not going to be around them anymore. Yeah. Like they don't do it because they're just like, I want my freedom. It's like, no, I can't stand them, goodbye. But yeah, so he just screams, and that's the indication that he is now officially divorced from his wife. I declare divorce. So then we cut to them at a restaurant, Marv and Jeff, where Marv is like trying to tell him, oh, your marriage is terrible too, right? Yeah, it's, it's police strikes, it's women's lib, it's condominiums. He's just like naming all these random like pop culture things that don't have anything to do with his marriage. He's like, what does that have to do with your marriage? I don't know. But he's convinced that Jeff is lying about being happy in his marriage. Because he doesn't want to have made a mistake in divorcing his wife, I guess. Then we go to a kid's birthday party at a roller rink where we meet Walter, played by Dom DeLuise.
Yeah.
And why is he in this movie?
Why not?
Because he's wonderful, and we should just put him in every movie.
He's better in this than he was in Fatso.
I
in
completely
2 or 3
agree.
scenes of this movie, he's better than in all of Fatso.
He's just such a great character. Like, I just don't even understand. Like, he's just this jovial, wonderful man that is, the life of the party.
And he's such a great sidekick character. And him and Segal are just hilarious in the scenes that they have together here. But Walter is basically an old high school friend of Jeff's, who is also divorced, because every character that we're going to randomly bump into from moving forward is going to be recently divorced. And he says he's doing porn now for work. He's still working as a plumber like he was back in the day, but he's also doing skin flicks on the side. And he said Supreme Court stuff. I was like, is that like a subgenre of porn?
I totally missed that whole thing, because I know later we find out that he got remarried, and but I had no idea. Like I totally missed this section where he was doing porn.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because
there's a funny line from Jeff there, because he says like, oh, Supreme Court stuff, and he's like, oh my God, that's crazy. I remember in high school you were like a Boy Scout. You were like, he's like, oh wait a minute, I had gym class with you. You're going to be a star. And then he just starts laughing.
That whole bit.
But he's just like cracking up, so, like, yeah, I got a big
presumably dick. This is where he meets his new wife then.
Where
no, because it's someone that I think it's the woman that he does the films with, or he talks about he's already seeing this woman.
Yeah, he mentions that he's already seeing his girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
But he doesn't say much more than that, and then it comes out later on, additional information. But yeah, so he said the reason that he's here in the first place is because he's learning to skate for his next film, Roller Bang. And then we move to another scene where it looks like they're walking through an airport, but I think it's a mall.
It's actually the Pacific Design Center.
Oh, the place that you were telling me about that's haunted? There's nobody there.
It's the weirdest place. So it's a mall.
Yeah.
With no people because you can only go into this place by appointment. But it's set up completely like a mall. Huge, wide alleys between the stores. Stores that are manned by a skeleton crew.
But it's like a wholesale warehouse, right?
Well, it's a place where you go to see like samples of carpets or drapes. If you would come through here with an architect or with a designer for who's remodeling your house for you.
Right.
That's the only way. And I had to deliver a bunch of carpet swatches.
Why were you delivering carpet swatches?
We worked for an HGTV subsidiary for a long time.
And so they wanted these things back. That's why I had to go. And like, it's just so creepy to walk around. And nothing was off limits. I stumbled into like the
I could
office.
have stolen so much stuff.
Wait, because there was no one looking. Like I had to like yell for people to help me. And I walked into like the whole office section, which with the lights were off, and there's like bullpens of computers. It's like, how did I even get in here? I just took an escalator here. And I wasn't sure that this is where it was until the camera panned when they were in the escalator, on the escalators, and I was like, oh, yep, I know exactly where. That's where I got lost.
But yeah, this whole time they're walking to this Benihana style restaurant, or I guess is it just a sushi place? I guess we don't really see them eating. We just see
they're drinking
right before they eat and them drinking. But they're going into this restaurant, and he's still trying to talk him into getting a divorce. But he secretly has trapped him into a double date here. Mm-hmm. But he's telling him on the way to the restaurant that, oh, I joined this group for like men who just got out of like long-term marriages, and it's so great, and they respect you more if you show up with like a young date, because they're like, oh yeah, he's living his best life. And he's like, and if it's an Asian girl, oh man, then they're really impressed. And it's like, what is going on?
So it feels like this is like the situation where like when people have kids, then they try to convince all their friends to also have kids because, oh, kids are the best. And they just actually
but
like
it's actually a trap. Like,
you're tricking them into having kids so they're as miserable as you are.
I don't know if you knew this, listener. Kids are so terrible. Just kidding, kids. When you're old enough to listen to this podcast,
is not true. We love you.
But he gets into this restaurant, and then immediately two Asian women walk up, and he's just like, "Oh, this is my girlfriend, and that's your girlfriend. Let's go to our table." And he's like, "Hold on a second." he's not ready to commit to this.
The second diner scene in this film in which friends are trying to set people up with.
Yeah, or third, because like right after Marv got divorced, he immediately took him to a restaurant to complain about Jeff's marriage. But yeah, so as he's leaving the restaurant, because we don't see much of them at the restaurant other than like they introduce themselves and say, oh, she's a doctor and she's like studying physics at some local college or whatever. And she's like, oh, thermodynamics. And he's like,
thermodynamics?
like he screws up what she said. And then as he's leaving the restaurant, Barbara pulls up in like a convertible, and she's like, "Oh, hi, Jeff." And I can't tell what the point of the scene is, other than it's like, did she catch him cheating on his wife?
That's exactly the point of that scene.
But that's not what happened, and he could very easily explain what happened. So it's not like he had actually cheated on his wife.
No, but it's also, but Barbara also doesn't like use it against him. I think it's just implying that she sort of has like leverage.
I felt like she should have at least hinted at that leverage later on, if that was the point of her seeing him there.
Well, I think it was more of a signal to her that, oh, he's open.
Oh, maybe.
That makes sense.
He's open for business.
That makes more sense then. But he gets home, and the kids are like, oh, Mom's next door. She wants you to come over. And it turns out their neighbors are getting divorced. This is another of the couples that had been playing football at the park with them.
Yeah. And then you enter this super awkward scene
with them on the couch. They just have a really mean fight arguing against each other. And I did like the one point where he like goes to pour someone a drink, and she's like, you didn't ask me if I wanted any. And then he goes to pour her a drink, and she's like, I don't want any. It's just like, just trying to piss each other off for no reason. But it's just there's not really much more to this scene other than like, oh, these two people are bitter and hate each other, even though they've been super lovey-dovey the whole time.
Right, they were like making out in the back of the car in one scene.
So now we go to the next day of football, and it's just Jeff and Mari playing by themselves.
Yeah, and then the music comes up, and I was like, is the movie over?
Yeah.
Are they the last married couple in America?
That's it.
That's it. We did it.
We did it. We got there in 30 minutes. But yeah, it's kind of funny because you would think that they would play the scene like, man, this is really awkward and hard to play football with just two of us. But no, they're just having exactly as much fun, maybe even more fun than they did when everyone else was there. And it's like, I think the point of the scene is really to hammer home that it's like, no, these two people belong together. They get along fine and they don't need anybody.
Yeah, they really enjoy each other.
But yeah, so they play their solo football game. I don't know why you even commit to going to the park to do it. But they did. And then it's Jeff's birthday, so Mari takes him out for his big birthday dinner, and she's got him blindfolded as they're approaching the restaurant, and he's expecting some fancy place, and they pull up to Tommy's.
Another place that I've been.
Yeah.
Tommy's is pretty close to downtown.
Yeah, this is actually the first Tommy's Drive-In in Los Angeles, and it had very recently opened, I think. He thinks she's joking at first because it's just burgers and hot dogs, but she's not, and they get food. But then she does surprise him when they get back to the car that there's like a champagne bottle and two champagne flutes under a blanket.
Oh, that surprise! I thought you meant the surprise was going to come later.
I'm doing the surprises in order. But that was the first surprise, and then she's like, "Oh, and did I mention that I'm not wearing anything under this coat?" And he's like, "Yes, you are." And she's like, "Huh?" And he's like, "Oh, no, you're not." And then they leave to go have car sex.
Until they're interrupted.
Until they are interrupted by a police officer doing the rounds.
Who was totally cool with this. He's like, "Oh, I thought you were teenagers."
It was a woman. It was a woman cop.
Oh yeah, but she was still good with it.
But they're in like, it looks like maybe like Pacific Palisades or like some really rich like coastal
they look like
neighborhood.
they're in the Hollywood Hills.
Yeah, Mulholland.
Yeah, like Mulholland.
But either way, it's like a rich neighborhood, and the whole point is like, go do this in Van Nuys. Like, the people here call the police if they hear a cat.
Not to offend the good people of Van Nuys.
Right.
Yeah.
But then we cut to like this couple sitting there at the gates watching them, and then they start arguing.
And she's like, "Do you know what they were doing in there?" And he's like, "Yeah, I have an idea."
Yeah, and then she was just like, "But we never do anything spontaneous."
You'd be freezing your ass off out there. So what? We have a perfectly good house right there.
And we have a perfectly good yard apparently here to watch other people do it.
Yeah. They just come out to the fence and wait for car sex to happen so they can call the police. But yeah, so the next day, as Jeff gets into the office, Barbara is there, sitting in his chair at his desk, and is suddenly very forcefully putting herself on him as a romantic partner. She's like, I'm going to just fuck this guy, even though he's very clearly married and happy with his wife.
Well, and pushing her off and saying no, like, it's very rapey on her part.
Yeah, he's being very forceful in his rejection of her advances. But she still, before leaving, pushes him up against a desk and kisses him hard. And then he leaves to go tell his wife what happened, basically. And as he's walking out of the office, his secretary's making fun of him, like, "Oh, where are you going? Oh, you going for a lunch? Where should I say you are?" And he's like, no, I'm just going home for lunch. And she's like, "Oh, a matinee." And he's like, "No, I'm going home. Like, get your mind out of the gutter." And she's like, "Okay, well, wipe the lipstick off of your face." Yeah. But he goes home to see his wife.
And apparently have a matinee.
Right, exactly.
Guess he changed his mind.
But yeah, so when he gets home, though, she's like sobbing in the kitchen because she just heard about another divorce because Donald and Reggie broke up.
Oh, and, not Donald and Reggie.
They were the ones that were supposed to make it. But yeah, so they I think at this point it's too dark for him to dump on her that he was just like sexually assaulted by her best friend. So instead it's just like trying to cheer her up, and they start telling each other what they like about each other to try and just like brighten the mood a little bit. And they say some really like sweet, like kind things about each other that it's actually pretty good writing, I thought. Is there much more to that scene?
Well, other than that, they have sex. That's about it.
Sure, yeah. But I never get the impression from this movie that they're having any trouble in that department. Like, is it indicated that they're not having sex as much as they would like? Because he never complains about it.
No, and they have, 3 kids?
Yeah, that's true. Or at least one. I don't know how many of them were actually their kids. There's 3 kids hanging around in every scene, but they could be his kids' friends or something. But yeah, so he goes out to have lunch with Marv again, who just keeps dragging him to lunch and telling him that marriage is terrible. But this time, he's telling him that divorce sucks. And that even though there's women all over the place, that he's never had so many people hit on him in his entire life, but he can't get it up anymore. Which Jeff is trying to tell him that it's psychological and that he's going to get over it and that it's fine. And he's like, are you trying to tell me divorce is easy? Like, freaks out on him. And for no reason, Jeff brings up that he's like, well, you know what I'm always worried about is a weak stream when I go to take a piss. And he's like,
Yeah, that seems like
I don't even know what the point of this conversation is. He's just like, I mean, like, other than to say like, oh, well, anyway, divorce aside, I'm worried about getting old. And it's like, why are we talking about this all of a sudden? This hasn't been a part of the movie at all that anyone's talking about age. It's been entirely about marriage and divorce. But now suddenly Marv gets freaked out that he has a weak stream and that he's an old man and that's why he can't get it up.
I mean, is this a thing? Do guys care about the velocity of their urine?
Look, everything I know about urine velocity I learned from pipe robots in medicine commercials. And as far as I know...
Turns out I didn't have a going problem. I had a growing problem.
But so Marv drags him into the bathroom to watch his pee stream and tell him if it's thick enough. If it's satisfying.
Is it the thickness?
It's not like a gravy
thickness.
thickness. Width. That would be bad.
I think you're really
if any of our listeners are peeing gravy, contact an exorcist.
Velocity, not
Or you might be
viscosity.
peeing wrong. You might be shaking it too much when you pee.
Damn.
But anyway, again, on his way out of a restaurant, I'm not clear if this is the same one, but Barbara catches him walking out of the restaurant and says, oh, hey, we're going to have sex now. And he says, no. Remember I said before I didn't want to do that, so we won't do that. And she's like, oh, we're going to do it, so let's go to a hotel. And then we just cut to the outside of a hotel where they've already had sex. And it just felt like this character wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, it's super out of character. It really kind of bothered me.
Yeah. And not just disappointed in the character, like, because he's been such a fun, like, good person the whole time, but also just it felt way out of the realm of what he would do, especially like earlier the day, all the nice things he said about his wife.
Well,
to be fair, he calls that out after the fact. Like, he's just like, hey, I just did something I didn't want to do.
Right.
Well, but there was also talk of a previous incident that he had done.
Right.
Earlier.
It was like 7 years ago. And apparently they had both dabbled. So there was mutual cheating in the past, but that they had forgiven each other for it. But he so he goes through with it and he sleeps with this woman, and as they're leaving she's like, you didn't enjoy that, did you? And he's like, no, I did. And she's like, no, you didn't. And he's like, yeah, you're right, I didn't. I'm sorry. And she's like, I'm not sorry. I don't understand why you feel so bad. And he was just like, well, because I didn't have to do that and I didn't want to do that. And I don't even know why I did it other than just because the norms of the time.
Peer pressure.
Yeah, it was basically like he just blamed societal norms, which I don't think is totally out of line for the 80s. That it's like, if a girl's throwing herself at you, you're supposed to sleep with her. Like, that's like, if you don't do that, then there's something wrong with you. Like, that's the way that popular culture made it sound at the time.
He said he also didn't, like, he didn't know how to deal with an aggressive woman, and like he would have been emasculated by not,
taking control of the situation.
Right. And yeah, so it's just like...
But he also said that those times are changing, which I think is like, it's prescient of this film to realize that it's like, this is the tail end of that kind of a world where you're just expected to have sex with anyone who asks you if you're a guy. But then we talk to Walter a little bit more at the office, and Walter says that he's going to be having a party and that a lot of people are coming and that they're basically all hookers. And I forget if I mentioned it, but my girlfriend is also a hooker. And he says this in the middle of the office, so like all of Jeff's coworkers are like, what is that? Why what about a bunch of hookers? And he's like, oh yeah, there's swingers and they kind of mix the word hooker and swinger up a lot in this conversation.
I don't think they are mixing it up. I think that they're saying both are true. Like,
well, maybe, but I mean, hookers cost money, and most of the people at this party just seem to be swingers.
Maybe. I don't know if I'd say most. I think there was an eclectic variety of people at the thing. But I just like the fact that he said like, oh, we didn't realize till after we were married that we have the same birthday. And that's why they're having this party, because it's their dual birthday party.
Yeah. And he also, like, I like when he says, like, oh yeah, we have swingers everywhere. We have them like San Diego. Some are coming from Anaheim. And he's like, Disneyland? They have swingers at Disneyland? And he's like,
Well, not Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, but in the area. Mickey Mouse.
and then he laughs at his own joke. And then I laughed at him laughing at his own joke. And then we move on from that scene to Jeff at the doctor telling him that he got gonorrhea from Barbara.
Yeah.
It's funny too because there's no like doctor-patient confidentiality
No,
involved.
that
He's
was
just
really-
like,
that
yeah,
was
so I have
super
gonorrhea,
disturbing.
and the doctor's like, who did you get it from? And he's like, Barbara. And he's like, oh yeah, I got a bunch of Barbara's people in here lately.
And then he's like, who? And then I think the doctor basically
Just blatantly tells him like other people that she's
No,
slept with?
he basically admits with his silence that it was him. Like he got gonorrhea
Oh,
from
really?
her. Yeah,
I missed
I mean,
that.
I think that's what they were implying when he doesn't really answer and he's kind of like looks down sheepishly.
Yeah.
But then he convinces him to get Mari in here to get tested under false pretenses.
Yeah, he's like, no, I can't tell her that happened. And he's like, tell her you have the flu. Tell her it's strep throat and cough a lot. And he's like, no, I can't lie to her. That would be terrible. And he's like, do you want your marriage to end? And he's like, no, I don't want my marriage to end. And he's like, cough a lot.
Is this just what doctors were like before HIPAA existed?
They're still like this. Remember that time I was coughing a lot? Gonorrhea. But so he goes home and he's coughing a lot because he's decided to lean into the doctor's excuse. And Mari's like, oh, well, I already have my flu shot, so no need for that. And he's like, oh, no, this is some rare Vietnamese flu. Mm-hmm. It's like, where did you get a Vietnamese flu? He's like, oh, it's going around now. You got to get a different shot for it. So come on. And so he takes her back to the doctor. And when he's there, Barbara's in the waiting room. And also
obviously
getting
there for getting her
Vietnamese
gonorrhea
flu
taken
But
care
she
of.
accuses him. And so I thought that this was going to be like a double bluff in that he actually got it from Mari, who cheated on him.
Oh, interesting.
And-
that would have been interesting.
But it wasn't.
No.
Because she
just
didn't
like-
even know that she's been giving...
Barbara's just delusional about
Yeah.
the number of men she's been sleeping
But she's
with.
also not at all upset with the doctor when he's like, I have gonorrhea. And she's like, yeah, you gave it to me. And he's like, no, I got it from you. The doctor told me that you gave it to me. Like, specifically you.
At that point, she's like, oh my God, if it was me, I caused an epidemic.
Yeah. And she's starting to realize, like, oh, yeah, that there are other consequences to just having sex with whoever I feel like at any random time. But they're having this conversation. And meanwhile, Jeff has been sitting on Mari's jacket, which she left on the couch in the waiting room. And so when she comes back to get it, she overhears him say, no, it was only you, so I could only have gotten the gonorrhea from you. And then she obviously flips out and leaves.
I hope she goes back and gets that taken care of, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so he follows her to the elevator to leave, but it's an express elevator, so they have to stay in it together the whole time.
I have to stay here. It's an express. But this is where they are in Century City. They're walking down like the center aisle between those two triangular buildings.
Yeah. And I did like the conversation they have here because they're bringing up the cheating that they did in the past. And he says something like, yeah, no, we got it out of our system. The doctor says I'm cured. Like, I'm sorry that this happened. And he's like, well, besides, you cheated with someone, I did. And she's like, yeah, but you forgave me for that. And he's like, I know, but I have to use something.
I really enjoy the dialogue in this movie.
Yeah,
I mean, it's moments like that just keep happening,
and
like,
it feels
over and
very
over.
real. It feels like something you would say in a real relationship.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're right. I did forgive you, but what am I supposed to do? Just like lose this argument?
Right? Yeah. It doesn't feel contrived at all. It's just like, you're right, and I know you're right, and we have this great relationship, and I screwed it up.
And he does that a couple times too, where like they have that argument in their like sunroom area where he says something to her, and she's like, "That's not true. Why would you say that in front of the kids or something?" And he's like,
Was I really hogging the conversation?
Was I really not being assertive?
Hey, you know something? Everybody's breaking up, and I don't understand why.
like at the same time as they're angry, they're also both very self-conscious and offended by what they've heard, and then they're just like immediately just fall back in love with each other most of the time. But here, that doesn't happen. We cut to Jeff just playing football by himself now. No, that doesn't happen. But that would have been interesting. Just him in the park throwing
Like,
the
why
ball
did
in the
you
air, but
bother to
still
go?
smiling and laughing like, oh, this is great.
If this were more of a zany comedy, he tried to convince some kids to play football with him, and they'd be all, "Get away from us, Creed!"
Yeah, get away, old man. But yeah, so Howard, the guy who is the divorce attorney for women, shows up as a house call for Mari, and it's like, "Oh, I heard about what happened instantly through the grapevine, and I'm here to tell you that you're very attractive still, and you don't need to worry about finding someone new." And just undressing while he's talking to her, which is the exact lines that he mentioned at the spa.
Right.
That he used on the divorced women. Yeah.
And she's not having it and tells him to get out.
Yeah, but he cannot
he's
take
basically
a hint.
doing the same thing that Barbara was doing in the office, which is just like, no means nothing. I'm gonna keep
super aggressive.
No is short for nothing. And we cut to Jeff actually at the park, but this time with Marv, and they're just they're playing football with some of the other couples that had divorced. But
no, they also have some other girls there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
New girls.
Everybody with their younger girlfriends.
Yeah, because he complains at this point, or after this, that he's just like, this girl can't even play football. You know, like she's not as good as Mari.
Right. And then, not that anyone showed any prowess in any of the previous football games, but for no reason, because there's no tennis courts anywhere near this park, I know for a fact, Mari and her new boyfriend walk by wearing full tennis outfits, carrying tennis rackets. Maybe at the time there was.
I was going to say, it's 1980. You were never at that park.
No, I'm pretty sure I checked it out. I mean, I was born about 3 years later. I would have noticed the remnants. But yeah, so she's there with a much younger man, probably in his late 20s, and Jeff is immediately furious because she's supposed to be at home crying that he cheated on her, not out already recovering from their breakup, and he gets so mad and he goes up to her and starts arguing with the two of them, but then they basically she throws it in his face he's like, I feel like you're being vindictive, and she's like, good, I am being vindictive. This is hostile. I feel hostile right now. And then she leaves with her boyfriend, and Marv is like, why don't you just go get a young girlfriend? I don't know why this is even a problem. And then he remembers that he told Walter that they could use the house for the birthday party,
right?
But that now he's separated with his wife. He doesn't have
the house.
The house isn't his anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so he tries to tell Walter that he's got to shut it down and cancel the whole thing. But for some reason, the party is still allowed to happen because Mari doesn't care and is willing to host all these swingers at the house. So basically, Mari and her boyfriend are at the house for the party, and Jeff brings an 18-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm. Why do you keep asking me what my age is?
He's like, you look old for your age. I mean, you don't look old. You look great. Can we stop talking about it? But
then we get a 10-minute dance number.
Yeah. Just a lot of dancing at this party. Walter and his girlfriend are dancing a lot.
Yes.
This is more like the girlfriend that would be cast in Fatso if it were directed by a man.
Yes, exactly.
Someone who's way out of his league. So yeah, we're just a lot of people dancing at this party. The couple from San Diego that we were hearing so much about before shows up. Lainey and I forget the husband's name. And they're very forward, and the husband is basically following Mari around the party, and she seems to be reacting to him.
Well, the husband is very forward. The wife is kind of just sitting back.
Yeah, she's silent, kind of, but she doesn't seem uncooperative yet. Spoiler alert. And the husband and Mari move into their bedroom, where Jeff is just watching them through the window.
Right.
I'm just going to watch these two people have sex in my bed. And then while they're talking, the guy just gets up, opens the door, and goes back to the bed to continue talking to Mari. He wasn't even thinking about the guy outside, but he just opens the door and just is like, no, come on in, sit down. Because he's expecting that the four of them are going to get in this bed, not just him and Jeff's wife. And the first thing he does is convince his wife to stand in the middle of the room and undress for them. The woman playing his wife, Lainey, is actually Sandra Curry, or Curie. I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name. But her sister is in The Runaways and will show up later this year in Foxes. And she strips completely naked for them, and Jeff and Mari are freaked out about it.
Well, they're not so much freaked out as they are, to me, as they are just kind of somewhat embarrassed about the situation.
Yeah, it just feels very
they're
awkward.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, they're both not trying to make eye contact,
but they're being awkward enough that it's making Lainey uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets to the point where after she's stripped completely naked, she's like, okay, this is stupid, and starts to put her clothes back on, and it's like, they're not into it, I'm not into it, you're the only person here that thinks this is going to happen. Like, I'm done with the orgies, I'm done with the swinging, like, we're going to have a normal marriage or we're not going to have a marriage. And she just gets up and walks out. And the guy's freaking out and trying to make excuses to keep her in the room, but she doesn't do it. And then as we're leaving the party, we see that Lainey is sitting on the couch with the divorce attorney.
I like that as the husband leaves, he turns back to Mari and is like, "You ruined my marriage."
Right.
Like
it's their fault.
Definitely her fault.
Yes.
Just sitting there watching you awkwardly force your wife to undress in front of a strange couple.
Yeah.
And Jeff and Mari then just kind of silently forgive each other. They embrace, and
it's pretty late in the party, so they're kind of like, okay, we can kick everybody out now.
And I thought that this was going to go south. Like, it's like, okay, everyone needs to go. I was like, oh, boo. No, that was like, oh,
they're very cooperative.
It's time to go. Time to leave. This isn't our home.
Yeah. So everybody leaves. Lainey ends up leaving with the divorce attorney. Apparently the kids were upstairs for the whole orgy.
Yes, that's super awkward. Right after the party, they go up and they're like, "Oh, here are our kids." It's like, what? You had a bunch of porn stars and swingers downstairs, and you just had your kids hang out upstairs while the party was going on?
I'm scared about recording this podcast while our kids are asleep. I'm not going to have sex with strangers in here. And then the whole family goes to Tommy's under the credits.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they immediately cut from the bedroom, like they woke the kids up and like, get in the car, we're going to Tommy's Burgers right now.
I mean, I like the moral of this movie. It's like, well, you know, our marriage isn't perfect, but everyone else is horrible.
Yeah. But by the end of the movie, I think other couples are probably getting back together.
I couldn't care less if they do.
That's true.
All I care about is Jeff and Mari in this movie. So
they're the only two likable people in the cast.
No, Dom DeLuise is pretty darn
That's
likable.
true. He's great. Him and his girlfriend seem really cute at the party too.
Yeah,
and it's such a stark contrast from. I keep wanting to call his character George, but the actor is George Segal. Such a stark contrast from his character in like Look Who's Talking.
Sure.
He's just like this horrible.
He's basically
guy.
Howard in Look Who's Talking. He's
exactly.
the divorce attorney type character. But the director here, obviously, Gilbert Cates, didn't direct a lot, but he also directed Oh God Book 2, which we'll be discussing later this year. Mm-hmm. It's not a good sign when you have two movies come out in the same year. But we'll see. Maybe that one's better than I remember it. The writer, John Herman Shaner, this was his last screenplay. He'd also written the 1977 version of The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Which is very bizarre.
It's not the Marlon Brando one, though, right?
No. This is the Michael York.
Yeah.
He also wrote Going South, which is a movie my dad loves. I have yet to watch it with him. He keeps trying to get me to watch it, and that's Jack Nicholson, and I want to say it's Shelley Duvall is also in that.
Oh, really? It's a Shining reunion?
Hold on. No, sorry, it's Mary Steenburgen.
Oh, okay. But
I also got really excited that John Herman Shaner also wrote an episode of Rat Patrol.
What is Rat Patrol?
It's this really weird World War II series.
With rats?
No, it's about sorry, I'm trying to bring it up, but it's like not coming up here.
While you're looking that up, I want to mention that he also has several acting credits, including Dr. Phoebus Farb in the 1960 version of Little Shop of Horrors, which is the Roger Corman one. And he also played a cop in the Garbage Pail Kids movie.
Oh, God. Yeah, so Rat Patrol was a World War II, took place in North Africa about just a patrol, like in jeeps out in the desert.
Yeah.
And I always just remember the show just because I watched a hell of a lot of TV growing up.
Yeah.
I was often just kind of like left with the TV.
Yeah.
It's not a parenting thing. My parents wanted me to go outside and go play. I was like,
It's like Frank Cross type situation.
Yeah, I was like, no, I'm going to stay home and watch TV instead because this is more interesting. So I watched a lot of crazy shows that were just run during the day because they weren't popular anymore. So like Doctari, Rat Patrol.
You might as well be speaking another language to me right now.
Doctari is so great.
That's the one where the doctor would work on video games that were broken. Right.
Doctari was like the Swiss Family Robinson meets Flipper, where it's just like a family living out in the savannah, and they have all these.
That actually sounds familiar. Actually.
And they have like lions and monkeys that interact with the kids and stuff like that.
Is it supposed to be Doctor and Safari mixed together?
I want to say it was their last name, but that actually makes more sense. And they solved crimes like poachers.
They solved crimes.
But yeah, so like I always remember like Rat Patrol is another like rerun show that I used to watch.
So I was digging through the cast a little bit, or the crew a little bit. I noticed that the assistant editor, I think it was Marion Segal.
Oh, really?
So she was married to him when this movie
interesting.
Came out. So then they had gotten married when they were like, 20, 22 or something like that. And this is well after that. So they had been married a very long time.
But she was an assistant editor on the film.
Yeah, she must have been an editor on the film.
Along the same lines, the director's wife at the time, not his wife now because he divorced and remarried, but his wife at the time sculpted all the sculptures that you see Mari working on. Because it said sculptures by something Cates, and I looked it up and it was his wife's name. I want to say June or Jane Cates, something like that. But yeah, George Segal as Jeff Thompson. Obviously, for some reason, the first thing for me is always going to be Just Shoot Me.
Yeah.
Even though he's in so many great things.
Yeah.
I love him in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Do you remember that Where's Papa movie?
Oh my gosh, yeah, with Maude.
Yeah.
That we did a double feature of that in Harold and Maude at the New Beverly.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what it was paired with, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah,
was it Harold and Maude?
I'm pretty sure it was Harold and Maude in that.
Yeah.
And that's so good. The last shot of that movie is so confusing, where he just like resigns himself to like play the memory of his father for his mom.
Yeah, it's such a strange movie.
I'm here, Mama. He also did the voice of Dr. Benton C. Quest on the 96 version of Johnny Quest.
Yeah, he and John Delancey both. I can't remember which one of them was first.
Oh, I can see that. Their voices are similar.
But yeah, they either traded off or one was eventually replaced.
And like you mentioned before, he was Mikey's dad and Look Who's Talking.
Yeah.
He's like this terrible guy.
His biological
His
dad.
biological father, yeah. An important distinction. John Travolta is the obvious adoptive father in that situation. Yeah. He's also in hundreds of episodes of The Goldbergs, which I haven't really watched much of, but I'm sure he's great.
There's hundreds of episodes?
There's hundreds of the episodes of that show. It's been on for a while now.
I did not realize.
It's even got spin-offs, I think.
Huh.
Natalie Wood is Mari Thompson. She shows up later this year in Willie and Phil as herself, so it's not considered a role in a movie because it's a cameo as herself. She was a child actress in the 1947 version of Miracle on 34th Street.
I looked that up. I didn't realize that was her.
Yeah,
that's like...
That was her first huge thing.
Was it her first thing or her first huge thing?
She had acted a little bit before that, but that was like maybe her first feature.
Because I want to say, was it Auntie Mame? No, The Ghost of Mrs. Muir. That's what it was.
Oh, that's right. She was the young version of Mrs. Muir.
Yes.
Yeah. But she was obviously also in Rebel Without a Cause, West Side Story. She was the girl that was kidnapped in The Searchers. John Ford's The Searchers. Yeah. Good stuff.
I always try to pitch this movie as much as possible. Inside Daisy Clover.
Oh, yes.
It is a terrific look at a darker Hollywood's version of A Star is Born. Like, just about using her as a means, as a product to sell, including getting her married so they could have a actor wedding and have the press talk about it and just to sell movie tickets.
Yeah, all the gross stuff that probably still happens to this day.
Yeah, it's just it's a really gross and upsetting movie about becoming famous in Hollywood, and she is glorious in it.
Yeah. Valerie Harper, we said before, obviously Rhoda on Mary Tyler Moore Show and on her spin-off Rhoda, and she also passed away in August of last year. So fairly recently. Dom DeLuise as Walter Holmes. Obviously, we had him in Fatso earlier this year, and I think he's the first major actor to have a repeat role so far.
Yeah.
In our viewing, Priscilla Barnes played Helena Dryden, of the Drydens. That was one of the couples, I think one of the lovey-dovey couple. She played Terry Alden in 70 episodes of Three's Company.
Yeah.
And she was also Della Churchill in License to Kill, which was Felix Leiter's fiance.
Oh.
Yeah. Who was murdered on their wedding day.
Oh.
Is that the first Timothy Dalton one?
Second
Timothy Dalton one?
Living Daylights is the first one.
Oh, I always mix them up.
Yeah, License to Kill is one where he goes rogue, and it's got a couple of weirder, zanier things that happen.
Is that the one where they go down the hill on the violin or the cello or whatever?
That's Living Daylights.
Okay.
Living Daylights has some great action set pieces.
Yeah. They both do. Honestly, Timothy Dalton's an underrated James Bond.
Yeah, License to Kill's got some good ones, including the most horrific death for Benicio del Toro, where he's ground up in a giant meat grinder slowly.
What about the guy that exploded in the like vacuum tube?
Oh yeah, that's License to Kill too.
Yeah,
and that was Anthony Zerbe.
Was it really?
Yeah.
That's funny. We need to rewatch the entire Bond series again sometime.
Again.
Oliver Clark was Max Dryden, Helena's husband, and he played the reverse psychologist in Mystery Men. Do you remember that character?
Psychologist in Mystery
I don't know who that character is.
Was this one of the...
I'm guessing he's someone that came to audition.
Yeah,
for
one of the
Mystery
auditions. Like, it just runs through so many people.
Mm-hmm.
And then we mentioned Sandra Curry before as Lainey, whose sister Cherry Curry is in The Runaways and shows up later this year in Foxes. She also played Zach Galifianakis' mom in the Hangover series opposite Jeffrey Tambor. Jess, what do you think? Is this a watch or?
I really enjoyed it, but I don't think that it's necessary to watch.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I did enjoy it. And I laughed, and I think it's a good story, but and it's gonna probably end up being high on my list
for the year
down the road for now. But I think you can skip it as much as I love Natalie Wood.
Yeah, I tend to side with you guys on this. It's a funny movie, and the dialogue is worth checking out. If you're a special fan of any of this cast, then maybe check it out, but it's not something that I would say you have to see if you're trying to work your way through the decade. What about Letterboxd? Where does this go for you?
So I really liked it. I put it pretty high on my list so far for the year. I put it above Hero at Large, but just below The Fog.
Okay.
Also the same, except I have American Gigolo in between The Fog and Hero at Large, but so I actually put this below American Gigolo, but above Hero at Large.
Okay. For me, this movie is going... I'm putting it in third place after My Brilliant Career, but just above Simon. So I think that's where that
so
one
you
lands for
My
me.
Brilliant Career, The Fog, this?
The Fog, My Brilliant Career, this.
Got it. Sorry.
my top three.
That's mine. Mine is The Brilliant Career, Fog.
Right. I'm the only person with The Fog on top at the
Yeah,
moment. I guess technically I will always
Ever.
have The Fog above those two. I think that's everything for this one. If you guys have any thoughts you'd like to share with us, we are Vintage Video Pod on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Letterboxd, where, as we've explained many, many times, you can find each of our full movie rankings for the year. Please consider rating us on iTunes to help people find the show, and if you find the time to leave us a review, we will thank you personally in an upcoming episode. And if you're feeling especially generous, you can support the show through patreon.com at patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you will join us next time for Midnight Madness, which Wikipedia describes as: the city of Los Angeles is the game board as 5 teams of college students attempt to win the Great All-Nighter, a dusk-to-dawn competition dreamed up by an eccentric graduate student. David Naughton and Stephen Furst are paired with a grab bag group of fellow students, including Michael J. Fox in his first feature film appearance. We leave you now with the audio for the trailer for Midnight Madness.
Midnight Madness, the ultimate game that requires sophisticated strategy and rigorous self-control. Midnight Madness, it's about girls.
I thought you'd never ask.
It's contagious.
It's Midnight Madness. Catch it at a theater near you.